I want you to back up Chuck Berry. No money, just
I've
bragging.
heard of this. I've heard of
just bragging rights. And I'm like, well, fuck yeah. Why would you not want to back up Chuck Berry?
You're right, but I've also heard he was doing that. He would get bands for hire and then kind of just goodbye at the end of the night, and he's got all the money, right? Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Average Superstar TV. I'm your host, Lauren Lepre. We have a new show every Monday morning on YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon, and iHeartRadio. And this week, we are back in the music world. Bring out that rockabilly guitar, because we have got Elvis from the Three Bad Jacks joining us. E, thank you for joining me.
Hey, man, how you doing?
Living a good life, brother. I'm so happy to have you on this show. I love having all diverse styles of music on this show because that is what type of person I am. I just love everything from every era, and you're definitely from the rockabilly scene.
Killer supporter, so we appreciate you, man. Back in the day when we were hitting Philly, you were at our shows, man. We remember that, and we never knew what you listened to. This is a really good thing.
Yeah. Well, man, I'm glad you remember me from those shows. And anytime I get a chance to see you, whether it be local or from happen to be on the road, I will always be there. But I'd like to start this off with hitting the rewind button. So going back as far as you remember, when did you know you want to be in music?
Well, my mom and dad named me Elvis. And, it's a really interesting story because my parents came from Europe. And most people come for a better life. Their life was just fine. They wanted to come to America, have a son, and have him play rock and roll. So, the first things I remember was walk through a party in the county jail. A prisoner bounced as they began to wail. Bounced jumping out as they began to sing. And, I heard that, and it was just so electric to me. And, my sisters they always listened to cool music. I remember they had David Bowie, Diamond Dogs. And then, my parents would be playing Freddie King and BB King. And, I'm going down, 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 and, Eric Clapton.
What?
So, music's always been in my blood. By the time, I grew up pretty poor, and what I had to do is I worked swab meets. So I found some Vivaldi books. I found some Paganini, and I just, taught myself how to read. I don't even know how the hell I did that because these were just random books. And, I was just whipping through classical, and I ended up meeting the guitar player from Rick James. I'm just like this little boy. I walk into Guitar Center. I'm just ripping through classical scales, and the guy looks at me. He's like, "Whoa, what the? I can't even play that shit." And I was tiny. I probably looked even younger than I was. But, from about the time I was 14, I was playing with guys who recorded Rick James records and Tower of Power guys. So, of course, everybody learns rock and roll first.
Absolutely.
But
two questions to jump in for a second. Was your father a rockabilly guy?
My dad, it's funny. No, well, yeah, my dad was a greaser.
Yes.
And my dad, cuffed his jeans. He had Royal Crown in his hair, and he looked like a flat out, something out of The Godfather. And people feared my father. He was, man, my friends were like, dude, I'm not going to fucking lie, man. Your dad scared us. And, my dad's old school, man. He was in the war. So I remember I was like this little kid. And, he was terrifying. And I said, Dad, have you ever killed somebody? He's like, yes. I'm just like, fuck, man, who just says yes? and and dude, silent. It's like a freaking movie, but he's the real deal. And I'm like, well, how'd you do it? You have a gun? I don't need no fucking gun. I bite off his nose. And I'm just like, holy shit, that was my father. So my dad was owed a cab company. They immigrated to Canada first. And my dad was lucky enough to see the Beatles. Just randomly, he took him to the airport and they're like, you want to stay for the show? And my dad's like, yeah. My mom should have been the one to be at that show, but it was my father. So my father was a definite character. My mom, on the other hand, was the music aficionado.
And when you guys came from Canada, that because you just said you pit stopped in Canada first, where did you end up in the U.S.?
Well, I wasn't even, I was a baby. So I was just barely conceived. I mean, it was pretty early on, and I think they ended up going to North Hollywood first.
Oh,
or no.
Okay.
I mean, my dad was just a trip, man. He almost bought Jimmy Stewart's house in Beverly Hills. And I remember this story too. And my mom didn't want to live in Beverly Hills because I had a swimming pool and she had 5 kids at the time. So we ended up in North Hollywood. Fuck, man, I could have been in Beverly Hills. What were they thinking?
Yeah.
I know, shit, man.
So right out of the gate, obviously music, the beam of light of music was just on you. And it looks like between, what you said about Rick James as guitar player and everybody, you start forming along. So were you automatically said like, hey, rockabilly is where I belong? Or were you doing all these styles of music too?
No, man. I mean, really what I really liked was, stuff like, I really liked funk. I really liked soul. And, I liked stuff like Little Willie John and Talk to Me, that old vintage K-Earth rhythm and blues. But I loved rockabilly too. I found myself playing more in rock situations. And, the time I switched to rockabilly, I was still playing with all the LA session guys. And I found most rockabilly guys, it's a really complex style. Rockabilly, to play it, you have to know jazz, have to know blues. Everybody sort of settles for like, but it's not really that. It's more like,
Yeah, some blues in there too. Yeah.
It's a hopped up sort of jazzy, bluesy, cool style.
Yep.
And playing blues. I mean, I came from a place where I played the blues like. But see, the blues and rockabilly are totally different. That's like Robert Johnson. Rockabilly, it always does this. It always sounds like there's 2 guitar players. So coming from a blues background to rockabilly, there was so many like half steps and chromatic and mixolydian. When you play blues, you're typically playing sort of like a dominant, almost a minor feel. But when you're playing rockabilly, there's a lot of major notes in there too, and it was really hard to sort of figure out. And I was playing with pretty advanced guys, and I was like, well, this is a little more than I think. So
Wow.
It was a stepping stone. It wasn't easy.
Got you. So when you started did you have bands as your teen years went on? And like when basically I'm leading up to when you're 18, were you like I got to go to school or college, or you like I'm doing a band and it's just going to happen?
Man, I remember I had my one and only job. I remember that Joe Jackson line. Well, sort of. I'm I'm like, I fucking quit, man. You'll hear me on the radio, motherfucker. Yeah, I had no, when I was in school, I had no intention of learning anything if it wasn't directly related to music. I didn't want to fucking do it. I didn't want to waste my mind with any useless information. Well, that maybe was a mistake, because, since then I have a ton of useless information. I can build a recording studio. I can wire a recording studio. I can break gear down and fix it. I mean, as a musician, as an indie musician, you do everything. So, I should have had maybe a different attitude. But, I learned the bulk of my stuff by the time I was 18. I didn't really have to learn much more on guitar, which is cool. I just sort of had to know how to do business, which is a very interesting thing. Because look, when I first started out, Vicki Hamilton, she signed Guns N' Roses, a bunch of other bands. She was my manager. She took me to Capitol Records, and they were going to give me this big record deal.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, because I could croon, and they had me play a couple songs, and the one song I did is our hit, It's Forever. And it's, it's a beautiful song. It's like, and it goes on to like a finger picking thing. Well, if I go around town drinking whiskey, stay out late at night, my belle will miss me. Gonna take her in my arms, then squeeze her tight. Ooh, tell her she's the only one. So it's beautiful. And they're like, well, why don't you play another song you're gonna put on your record? And I'm like, well, okay. I'm like, okay, well, here's another one I'm gonna record.
Ace of Spades.
If you like to gamble, I tell you I'm your man. And some you lose, some it's all the same to me. Pleasure is to play, makes no difference what you say. And they're like, well, I mean, we like them both, but you got to pick one. I'm like, well, fuck, dude, I can do this shit without you. I don't even fucking need a record deal. So I did it myself. They wanted me to be, probably.
They wanted you married to one format.
Well, yeah, man. Yeah. Why should you be?
No. I think it was a smart idea. Yeah. You think Mike Patton from Faith No More, between the 16 bands he has, and puts out an album like, now it's over here. Now it's over here. It's just, he likes to create music, and that, I think artists should be able to branch out as much as they possibly want.
Well, and I guess it's always a personal choice. When I listen to AC/DC, I like them just as much as, a rockabilly band. I like everything too.
Yep.
And I listen to Sam Cooke. I listen to everything that moves. But, we recently started doing Dirty Deeds, Mm-hmm. It's like, why can't you do it all?
Yeah.
We love it all. To me, you see these bands, and AC/DC is the exception. I'll take 500 of the same records. But most of these other bands are so far from anything we grew up listening to, like Led Zeppelin or the Rolling Stones or even Elvis Presley or any great artist. I mean, they refuse to evolve. Yep. I could have put out 50 of the same rockabilly records, and I still play rockabilly. But what I try to do with my music is mix it up, and I detest bands that maybe can't move forward and just sort of regurgitate the bullshit because
It's less meaningful when you do that. You might know your audience and you might be getting paid for it, so I understand, but you're totally right. Like AC/DC certainly has a sound. Def Leppard certainly has a sound where you just know that's what you're listening to.
And yeah, within reason, you can't fuck with that. And those are a couple bands where it's a prime example, but some people just get in front of the crowd and the camera and do the same stupid poses and regurgitate something that was sort of shitty to begin with. And as kids you sort of believe in it, but then you get a little older and you're like, this is sort of like a
show.
It's a parody of itself.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I was always attracted to like the Queen, Guns N' Roses, were like, yeah, them, but they could take their music anywhere.
Which is a really good thing. I think the perfect example is, the Rolling Stones. I mean, they, look how fast they, they just changed. And, the Beatles, of course.
Yeah.
And
they had a half a century to play around, the Rolling Stones. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, but you look at the, the original stuff, which was the typical Chuck Berry and how fast it moved, but it was definitely helpful with the Beatles.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they followed their lead in a sense.
Yeah, and there's certain bands that just kind of have to change where the audience wants them. Like Jerry Lee Lewis was like amazing in rock and roll, but eventually after his troubles, the country world is really where he belonged and had the audience. So he kind of converted his music over to that area.
Well, he married his 13-year-old cousin. I guess it was okay back then.
Back then, it's not stud. I mean, yeah.
I don't even think it was good back then, but
no, it wasn't. But I think Presley met Priscilla like very young too. So
everybody makes that comparison. You're the second person who's made the comparison this week. And we had this discussion. I mean, look, my mom met my dad, or she was having a baby when she was 15. And I mean, it was a very different world. I'm not saying it's right. That being said, she was mature enough to be with my father till my father died at 90. So, it was a good match. I certainly wouldn't suggest,
no,
somebody having a baby that young and, but hey, what do I know?
I know. I mean, sometimes I guess it works. It's just, obviously we wouldn't suggest it. Yeah, it's just totally. But
bottom line is, look, I played with Chuck Berry, and
can I freeze you right there and say what was he like as a person? Because you always hear like he was, he's the guy that beat up Jerry Lee Lewis at one point. But yeah.
Well, I really don't know much about the beating up of Jerry Lee Lewis. I mean, it was sort of heartbreaking, I got to tell you. And I almost I'm going to be reserved in a bit.
Sure.
But it was sort of sad that the way I went about doing the gig for Chuck Berry is the promoter, I was pretty decent friends with the promoter. And he's like, look, I want you to, it was, a show for 10,000 people. We're one of the headliners. It's really cool. And he's like, I have a show for you. I want you to back up Chuck Berry. No money.
I've heard of this. I've heard of
just bragging rights. And I'm like, well, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, why would you not want to back up Chuck Berry?
You're right, but I've also heard he was doing that. He would get bands for hire and then kind of just goodbye at the end of the night, and he's got all the money, right?
Well, and that's fine. But so basically I go, well, let me have the CD. And the promoter's like, Chuck Berry is not giving you a CD. So I went out and bought his greatest hits. And, I had vinyl, but, I wanted a CD at this point just to learn the stuff easy. So I learned every single Chuck Berry song, verbatim.
Mm-hmm.
I get musicians to play for free, except a piano player, which I paid him. And I had to learn all the words so I could guide the band and it be rehearsed. Because Chuck Berry's very known to forget where he's at. He's going to go into a different key, and we needed to be rehearsed. So I spent a lot of time on this gig. We get to the gig, And, he's barely getting out of his Cadillac with it running backstage. He just doesn't, want to be with anybody. He doesn't want to talk to anybody. He gets out of his car, and the bass player that's been rehearsing, who's, 100 times better than the bass player he's going to play on stage, he goes, "I don't want your bass player, but we'll use your shit." My bass player freaked. He's like, "Well, you can kiss my fucking ass." The thing about Chuck Berry is, I just don't really think he was all that nice a guy. In my humble opinion, I mean, geez, well, there's a little bit of bitterness towards Chuck Berry. And I don't want that to come out and maybe overshadow how much I love Chuck Berry's music.
Gotcha.
But he was a bastard. And it's sort of hard to say this, but because, everybody wants to love their idols. But once you have a bad taste, like when I played with Scotty Moore from Elvis's band, dude ripped, remembered everything. He was amazing. When I'm on stage, I played with, Bill Haley's Comets. And the guys were, the original band, the guys who created all the hits that got back together. And they were just so humble and so cool. And sometimes you don't want to meet your heroes.
They say that a lot, man. You could be disappointed. They could let you down. You could have this big, imagine what that would be like, and then they don't want to even talk to you.
Well, look, Chuck Berry got all this stuff from T-Bone Walker. That's T-Bone Walker. So, Chuck Berry straightened it out. He was very influenced by another great guitar player. T-Bone Walker, in my opinion, is, one of the greatest. And, Chuck Berry is an amazing lyricist and he's an amazing songwriter. But I don't understand in a lot of senses why he'd get these bullshit bands. Most people didn't even understand the style. And he got out, like I'd watch, as a kid, I was such an aficionado on Chuck Berry. I'd watch all his videos. I'd buy him on VHS. And I'm just like watching these burnout hippies play wannabe BB King riffs to a completely different style.
Yeah.
It really broke my heart because, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but I looked at the contract and I supplied him his amps. I did all the stuff and he was making 40 grand on the gig and we just got nothing. And it's cool. I mean, dude, he's Chuck Berry. I'd do it again.
I totally get you. It was quite at the end of the night when the set's over. Did he say thanks or any of that, or he just walk off right back to his car and out of here?
He was, look, Chuck Berry at this point didn't know what fucking state he was in.
Okay.
Dude, everything turned into a slight shuffle, where it's like, down in Louisiana, across from New Orleans. It was more of like, it was really slow. It was a bit geriatric. Mm-hmm. And, he just didn't know what the fuck he was doing. But it was, give the guy a break. Look, sometimes when the Dancing Bear shows up, I was just happy to see Chuck Berry.
Yeah.
But, in a lot of cases, Chuck Berry, he did a lot of pretty shitty things like, the cameras in the urinals. And
yeah.
I mean, it was just weird. It's like, I want to love this guy, but I just never really liked the stuff he did.
It's one of them things that's going on in the world when you say, like, I don't want to go all political, but like when the whole cancel culture thing, like you look at every one of our ancestors and everyone's digging up dirt. And I'm like, there's dirt on everyone, man, including me and you. Like none of us are in sainthood. Like I try to separate unless it's just so bad, but like,
I think there's degrees. Look, when, the most influential rock guitar player, if you really break it down, where I think guys like Cliff Gallup and Scotty Moore and Fanny Beecher were just way better guitar players. The most influential rock guitar player from that era, there's no denying it's Chuck Berry. Mm-hmm. And just because of all the stuff he did when he died, nobody went to his funeral. It's like nobody wanted to touch it. I mean, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sort of a shame. Look, Chuck Berry wasn't the nicest guy, but there's plenty of reasons why he probably wasn't the nicest guy. I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know his like background story or any of that, but it's funny because the two spiteful guys, the toughest of the tough, it was Jerry Lee Lewis and Chuck were the last two standing from that era. If you really think about it.
I mean, come on, dude. In my humble opinion, the beautiful thing about Elvis, I mean, dude sang so good, like. Beautiful voice,
Yep.
Well, just because you think you're so pretty, and just because your mom thinks you're hot, well, just because you think you got something nobody else has got, you caught, or shit like, yes, my baby left me, never said a word. Was it some I done something that she heard? My baby left me. My baby left me. My baby even left me. Never said goodbye. I mean, dude sang like a bird.
Oh God, yeah, Mystery Train, yeah. And I liked how he went all over the place. If I Could Dream, I love that. Like that's a totally different song for his style. I love that song.
Pardon me if I'm sentimental. Just everything about the King. I mean, it was very unique and diverse. That he's a trailblazer.
Yeah.
There's a reason why he'll always be number one, I guess. And then, but in my humble opinion, man, if Jerry Lee didn't go through all that stuff,
he took them. He
may have been the king of rock and roll.
To me, he actually had the crown for a little bit until that downfall. Because I'm a giant. I'm giant. Jerry Lee is from that entire Sun Records, that entire era. It is Jerry Lee, and I love his performances. I mean, the idea that the guy was even lighting the piano on fire in the 50s, today, that's no big deal. But the audiences back then, I loved his charisma, the hair, and he stood up.
Man, come on, his voice. You shake my nuts and you rattle my brains. Too much love drives a man insane. You broke my wheel, but what a thrill. Goodness gracious, great. I mean, come on, dude. Jerry Lee, everything from like "Don't Put No Headstone on My Grave." I don't know if you ever heard this.
The Last Man Standing album is amazing.
Have you ever heard this song? Well, here's a story about a very fortune-colored man who got arrested down in old Hong Kong. Have you ever heard that song?
Is it supposed to be Jerry? Because I don't know it.
It's Jerry Lee Lewis. Covering Hoagie Carmichael, man.
Wow. He covered a lot. Like, yeah, he covered a lot. Like a lot of, but I just always obsessed with the dude. I actually stopped at his I actually got to go take a tour of his house. When I went to Graceland and Sun Records, Jerry's house was only about 30 minutes away. He wasn't there, but you could actually call. It was actually on Facebook. There was the Lewis Ranch. You could contact it and go there. So I got to go there for a little bit, but he wasn't there. But it's cool. It's like it was open, as long as you had an appointment, it was cool. So I thought I got to do my salute to that whole era there. So obviously out Graceland and everything too. But
what's really interesting doing the music I do, and covering the ground I've covered. I mean, we're fans first and foremost.
And that's beautiful. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful, and it's good to tribute. I mean, Nashville, you go to like the Johnny Cash Museum. I actually went and had my morning coffee with June and Johnny at their grave on my tour from there. So,
wow.
I just think it's, just to play tribute, I mean, sit with Mr. Cash. So I thought that, music is so important to people, but it's like really important to me because it's my best friend. Music overall in the music community, including yourself, It's my life. That's my
Well,
lifeline, more than film.
there's a lot of people who get into music because it's a vehicle for women and fame, and it's really interesting. I mean, I just loved my heroes, and I did everything I could to just get a gig, which sometimes we played for pennies. I mean, we didn't care. We just we're little kids, and we just got in a van, and thing broke down in the side of the highway. We didn't know you had to put oil in it. And it was the vehicle that introduced us to our heroes. And whether it's Link Ray,
Oh,
or Dick Dale, I booked Link Ray on a huge show with Dave Mason because I loved him. I'm headlining venues with, Bill Haley's Comets and, the Paladins, which were another really, really great band at the time. And you just get to meet these legends who were just so blown away that there was kids that still listen to the shit.
yeah.
We were just, I mean, dude, we bring in a big upright bass in LA and there was nowhere to fucking play. We play the Red Onion and shit. And dude, we thought $100 between the band was like the end all. We're like, holy cow, we're professional now. All I had to do was spend, $100,000 on gear. And look at me, I just made $30. I mean, and then you just, I mean, part of the, some of the people I played with was Joe Strummer from The Clash. And,
yeah.
And he was, it's really weird. I wanted to tell him I was his biggest fan, but he was ours immediately. And I'm just like, wow, like guys like Lemmy, they walk up to us, you play the best version of Ace of Spades, I've ever heard.
Yeah, I was about to actually go there with you. I remember hearing that on Little Steven's Underground Garage. Actually, they played the song, and in between, Kelly Ogden and the Kelly Dollarot and everybody, but Steven actually brought that up about. He said that Lemmy made that claim. Yeah, that you have the best version.
It was mind blowing because, look. We were kids. We followed Lemmy everywhere, dude. Poor guy. We just, we'd be his entourage. He didn't want one. But we saw Lemmy. We followed him and just looked at him.
I'm glad he got like the credit he deserved in his last 10 years. He had technically later success, mainstream wise, but I'm so happy it happened.
Well, it's funny because my friend Tim Johnson was doing monitors for Motorhead, and we had that shirt, the Hellbound Train.
Yeah,
and it was a girl straddling the train, and Lemmy walks up to my buddy Tim. He's like, he looks at the shirt and he's like, that shirt is disturbing. But we used to headline the Henry Fonda, and I'm a big Motorhead fan, not just a little. I mean, the reason why we play is that's one of the bands, we love dearly. So I get a hold of Tim. I go, dude, can I have the manager's number? I want to book Motorhead. I've got like $20,000 in my pocket, burning a hole in it. And I got a hold of the promoter or the manager, and I go, look, I want to book Motorhead. He's like, why? I go, because I love them. He's like, how much you gonna give me? I'm like, $20,000. And he looks at me and he just fucking laughs, because we're kids. He's like, Elvis, I have to tell you the truth. If this was bumfuck, middle of nowhere on a Monday, that would be totally acceptable. But he's like, it's gonna cost you more like $100,000 in this area. And I'm just like, damn it. I really tried. He's like, well, who's going to be there? I'm like, I don't know, my fucking friends. I don't give a shit if 2 people show up. I just want to play with fucking Motorhead.
Mm-hmm.
That's my little crazy Motorhead story. But, we did shows with Lemmy, just different events with his band Headcat, because Lemmy was a very, very big rockabilly supporter. And he was a rockabilly. He was, in a sense, he was in a rockabilly band. And, he used our upright bass, and we got to chat with him. And, there's a lot of people you are graced with getting to be in their presence. And Lemmy was, larger than life. And it's funny you mentioned he got bigger. I mean, we didn't even notice. Elvis. I mean, from the time I was a kid, we just looked up to him like he was the biggest thing on earth.
He got like more mainstream. He was getting more mainstream press. And if you remember when he passed, I don't really watch all the music shows, but like
Sure.
Duff McKagan and like Johnny Depp, and there was a whole sea of people doing like a whole tribute to Lemmy. And the idea that the Academy recognized him, you'd almost think they'd be like, whatever, not good enough. No, it was so good enough because I think they played like 10 to 12 minutes and just interchange of all his songs, you know?
You know, it's funny. I don't watch the news, and I certainly don't watch TV. And people will mention bands. I'm like, I don't know who the fuck they are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I like Marvin Gaye. You know, I like Elvis.
Yep.
You know, and I'm just into what I'm into. Most new shit sucks. There's very few new things, I mean, that I'm really into. And it's just a little disingenuous. I mean, when we were kids, I mean, what we all tried to do was we want to be the best guitar player. We want to be the best singer, you know, and there was just like, to me, a pride in it. Now you can just push a button and fix a vocal and do 500 takes, and it sort of sounds like it.
Yeah.
The
hard work is gone, and that's what I don't like. I don't like that about film either, because that's more of my world. But yeah, no one wants to put the hard work in anymore. They always try to find ways around things.
Well, in my opinion, look, if you know, Metallica called me tomorrow and they're like, we want you to play in Metallica. I mean, not for nothing, I'd sound exactly like Metallica would want you to sound.
Yeah.
You know, if, you know, Red Hot Chili Peppers called me, you know, I'd play it like exactly how it was supposed to be played. You know, and if a jazz gig called me or a country gig, I mean, you know, I'd certainly never play modern country, but, you know, the vintage country, if they wanted me to play all the pedal steel and all the crazy stuff. I mean, a musician is a fucking musician.
That's right.
You know, there shouldn't be any boundaries to what you play. And people are like, oh, you're rock. It's like, dude, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Yeah.
I can play anything fucking anytime.
And that's one thing I've never liked about any artist, that when they make a side band and it literally sounds like the previous band they were in. I'm like, well, what was the point of that? You're gonna do a side band, go over here. You know, like right. What show us more parts of you.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of really great musicians out there. I think most of the ones I really like, I just sort of stumble on. And, you know, a perfect example, I mean, I don't even think it's how good you play your instrument. I think it's how you play your instrument. I remember we used to play with the Cramps all the time.
One of my top 10 bands ever.
And you know what? It's funny because, you know, I'm coming from like, you know, I'm getting flown around by Geffen. I'm getting, you know, asked to be, you know, all the bigger bands. You know, I always got a call, whether I took it. You know, I like doing my own shit. But I remember I saw the Cramps, and I always loved the Cramps. But, you know, two things hit me. I'm like, well, she can't even fucking play guitar, but she does it so fucking cool. You know what I mean? I love this. Mm-hmm. You know, I love the Cramps, and how could somebody play so awesome but barely know how to play? And the Cramps were always like one of my go-to bands. I just loved them. And, you know,
Bad Music for Bad People is one of my definitely go-to albums all the time.
Love that band. And
yep.
So yeah, I mean, shit. I mean, as you could tell, there's been a lot of stories. You know, I have a really great story. You mentioned fire. Well, you know, we had one of the fucking most jaw-dropping live shows where we'd set everything on fire. We did it for years, and you've seen us light stuff on fire. But it was, you know, it was sort of manic, to say the least. And it was, you know, sort of like going to see the Who. You know, just breaking all our shit. And I'm playing this theater with Bill Haley's Comets. And we're always like, we always dug the Paladins. But the Paladins go, look, Elvis, you know, we just, you know, we don't want to follow you because, you know, you guys are just fucking crazy, and it's not going to work like this. They're more mid-paced and, you know, definitely, you know, they have a lot of energy, but, you know, we're going to break shit, you know. And so I get on stage.
You can steal the page out of Jerry Lee Lewis of "No One Follows the Killer." Kind of.
Well, dude, this is a really funny this is a really funny story. So I had rubbing alcohol, and my eyes are like this. I mean, I'm like, ah. I walked to the center of the stage and put a bead on the fucking stage, and it's just like there's 7-foot flames. Light all the cymbals, upright basses in the air. It's on fire. And we're not thinking of blowing anybody off stage. I mean, we're there to see the Comets, man. That's it's just a show we play. And I believe it was the drummer, and he's like sort of scooting on over really slow, and he's taking little. And I mean, I got to say, the Comets played one of the greatest shows. I mean, the bass player would be on his back. The drummer played, he played with Benny Goodman. So the guitar player, these guys are fucking masters. And the drummer hobbles over to us. He's like, "Hey, Elvis." I'm like, "What's going on?" He's like, "We thought we fucking had you till you set the stage on fire." And he just goes, "Hee." He just keeps on walking, man.
Freaking amazing.
Such a great band, man. Such a great band. And they're one of the few bands, man, that could stop a song and people will still be clapping 5 minutes afterwards. Great, great band, man.
Amazing. So I know when I introduced you up front, I definitely plugged that you're from the band Three Bad Jacks. So why don't you give us the origin of that band, how that started?
Well, I was in another band. It was called Terror Train. And Terror Train was, one of the first American psychobilly bands, and one of them, very highly revered. I mean, if anybody was coming through, it could be anybody, they'd go through LA. Now, the sound we had was maybe 25 years, maybe ahead of everybody else. It was just very ahead of its time. And, when we play, Billy Idol came, it's like the Chili Peppers came. It's like, it was one of those gigs, and it was Motorhead with an upright bass in a sense, Leonard Skinner, Cramps, and Stone Temple Pilots wanted to take us on the road. They loved us.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, it was, we'd play with the Weirdos, we'd play with the Mentors, we'd play with, I mean, there wasn't really a whole lot of rockabilly to play with. So, we'd play with.
The band formed, though, what, early 80s?
Early 80s, yeah.
Okay.
And
as soon as you said the Weirdos, I was like, all right, so that's got to be early 80s, yeah.
Yeah, and basically, a lot of record companies, wanted to get a hold of us and wanted to, sign us. And I had an audition with the Chili Peppers. I don't know exactly. My bass player set it up, and it was like a back audition where I didn't have to go with everybody else because I knew, I played with, certain people. And I'm just like, nah, I love the Chili Peppers. And that's one band I would have really liked to have been in. But I'm like, I think we have something that nobody else is doing. And, sure as shit, we did really good. But when it came time for business, like to take those leaps to go on tour with Stone Temple Pilots and, sign the deal, we're getting courted by Hollywood and it's a bunch of labels and stuff. And it was harder for us because we had an upright bass. Nobody would take it seriously because one of the greatest things that happened to rockabilly was, the Stray Cats, obviously.
Damn right.
Great band. But one of the fucking hardest things that happened to rockabilly was the Stray Cats. So anything with an upright bass would be labeled, okay, this is just a Stray Cat ripoff, when we had nothing, to do with that sound. And they'd see with they'd hear with their eyes, they wouldn't listen to the fucking music. So, I realized, like, I think Hollywood Records wanted us. I think there's a few labels, and I think the person conducting the music, it was so frustrating because they would actually argue with, the A&R people. I'm just like, it just blew up. It parted in that, I was sort of happy, and I was so loyal to the band. They go, we think, we don't understand why you're not so broken about this. And I'm just like, well, I'm fucking over it. I mean, I've been loyal for all these years. And when we could have actually took, a big leap, instead of fucking embracing the deal, they obviously want to give it. You're just fighting with these people. So it never fucking happened. There was, like every, VH1 special, there was a lot of, drugs. There was a lot of just insanity. So, I started Three Bad Jacks, and to where Terror Train was really aggressive. I mean, it was like straight up fucking Motorhead, really fast, but, faster and crazier.
Was the band Terror Train named after the movie?
That's a really good question. I think probably, I think it was.
It's free on Tubi if whoever wants to watch it. Yeah.
Yeah. And dude, this band was legendary, to people who fucking remember it. I mean,
Yeah.
it was such influential part of history. I mean, bands got influenced by this band without even knowing this band existed, because everybody who came through, borrowed from it. It was really, really ahead of its time, and sort of a shame, man. That could have been a really, really big thing. And then, I changed my mind. I mean, when I started, Three Bad Jacks, I'm like, well, I think I'm going to be bluesier. I was like, and then it slightly changed. We morph so quick. And then we wrote that song, It's Forever, that I opened up with. And shit, I mean, we didn't get no help. My buddy Tim Johnson, he's like, I asked him if he could record us, and I knew jack and shit. I mean, a fan let us borrow $3,500 so we could buy $2 chords and fucking ADATs, just to record a record. But, we finished that record, and we got reviewed in Music Connection, and we got like, it's like they're giving us a 10, they're giving Paul McCartney a 5, and they're giving like Madonna a 4. And they're like, as great a record as you're going to get. Wow. And with that song, It's Forever, we're selling more records. We're like a mid-level major. And I'm thinking to myself, every band's like this, because we're just stupid. We have no idea the way it works. We had no fucking clue. And, just during that time, I had, management bringing me to Sony. And I remember the day I was going to ink a contract at Sony Records with Kenny Commissar. I looked in his office and I said, look, dude, you must be an evil genius, because this is the messiest fucking office I've ever seen in my life. And Kenny's like, well, I got some good and bad news. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I forgot what the good news is. Like, look, dude, today I've been fired, and everybody at Sony has been fired as well. Mm-hmm. And that was, the changing of the guards. And luckily, look, everybody's like, I'll be your publicist, I'll do that shit. I'm like, none of that fucking shit works. It really fucking doesn't. Unless you got a couple $1 million behind you. The only thing that keeps you around is a fucking buzz. That's the only thing that'll do it. You can't buy a buzz. Anybody who tells you that is fucking bullshitting you. I remember, somebody, because we're doing good. They're like, come to MI, I want you to give a discussion. And the first thing I said is, most of you motherfuckers aren't going to make it. You know what I mean? And they fucking hated me. It's just the reality. It's just like, well, what's your plan? Get in the fucking van, start touring, see if people like you.
Earn it. Yeah.
I mean,
build your audience. Yeah.
Build your audience, and I can honestly say none of those motherfuckers did jack or shit.
Yeah.
It's, typically if your mommy has enough money to send you to MI, you've never really struggled touring, learning your craft and figuring out how to perfect a show or how to be a good frontman.
Where could everyone find your music these days?
Well, it's interesting. They could contact us directly from Facebook. We're building a site right now, so our site's down. But if they want hard copies, they can, contact us. or they can go through, iTunes and Spotify and all that stuff. It's all pretty much out there. Oh yeah.
Well, this has been really awesome. So there's the last segment of the show I usually do is what I call 10 rounds, where I ask my guests 10 questions. Some are from music, some are from film, and some is just from like everyday life. If any of these questions, I know they're all going to be fine for you, but if any of them don't bounce for you, don't worry about it. We'll skip over it. So starting off with question number 1, what is your favorite venue to play at?
Wow, that is a really, really hard one. I'd have to say my favorite place to play is Los Angeles, Orange County. And there's many, many great venues. That being said, I play the Navajo Nation all the time, and we've been doing it for years. So when I play the Navajo Nation, it's very appreciated, and some of the best memories come out of that because the people are just so wonderful. So I'd have to say when I'm around Gallup, New Mexico, maybe the Juggernaut, it means something to me. Sweet. And I think purely the people.
Not playing, but for you on a night out, where's your favorite place to watch a show?
Well, I mean, I just went to the Cruel World Fest, and that was at the Rose Bowl, and that was a great place because, there were so many bands and it was laid out pretty well. But I'd have to say, I went to see ZZ Top recently, and that was in Paso Robles, and it was just laid out so wonderfully, and it was small and intimate. I like that, but venues like the Troubadour where it's just really small, I sort of like that.
I like more intimate. The place.
I like the intimate stuff.
By far.
Again, we're going to see Iggy Pop, and I'm going to see The Cure at the Hollywood Bowl. I mean, I guess in Cali, it really varies because we have so much out here.
Cool.
Yeah, man.
Where's your favorite country to play in outside of the US?
Something always was super pleasant about Norway and Finland. You get these like crazy tank drivers, from Finland just describing how they battled Russians and shit. And, those Finnish, man, they just, sit in one spot for a couple days, man, and keep drinking. I mean, they love their rock and roll. Germany was great too, but, Norway, Finland.
Cool. I know Norway is like the best place to live in the entire world and the most happiest people. I always hear a lot. I know it's a smaller country, but how they have their system there, it seems like they're doing really good over there.
It's sort of tough, man, because when we went to Germany, they were just wonderful to us. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's sort of hard to pick a favorite.
I think I know your answer, but your favorite band of all time?
It's hard, man. That's a tough one because there's just so many really good ones.
Yeah, there is.
as an entertainer, without a doubt, Elvis, Johnny Cash, Jerry Lee, Little Richard. I mean, but then there was so many other great musicians like, Jimi Hendrix and, the Beatles and Rolling Stones and the Kinks, which, to me were as good as everybody mentioned, just maybe, somewhat underappreciated. One of my biggest influences, Merle Travis. So too many to name, really. I mean, I put on Marvin Gaye and I'm just like, this is what I want to do.
Otis Redding, the list goes on and on. I mean, yeah, totally.
And I play Motorhead and I'm like, this is what I want to do. So it's
not enough time in the day for you. You got to clone yourself.
I love music.
I love it. I think you may have just named it, but what's your most underrated band of all time?
I'm going to kick myself, but I'll name three.
Go for it.
When I was a kid, I thought David Bowie was as big as the Rolling Stones, but he never was. But to us, he was.
Mm-hmm.
David Bowie was just fantastic.
True artist.
Yeah, just amazing.
Yep.
But he wasn't taken as, we saw the aura we didn't know. And I was a kid. I didn't know the difference. I mean, definitely the Kinks, I think they should be way bigger than they are.
Agreed.
And funny enough, man, for as great as Rod Stewart was, I don't think it lasted like the Rolling Stones. I may be wrong, but Rod Stewart was just really, really good. If you listen to him in Jeff Beck band, I mean, wow.
Yes.
I mean, he is Sam Cooke. He's
one of the best voices ever. I love that voice of his.
Oh yeah, and I mean, this is all pre Led Zeppelin. I mean, very good.
Wait.
Maybe the Yardbirds, was another one. Nobody knows who the fuck they are, but sure, great band.
What is your favorite album of all time?
I'm so sorry. I can't answer that because I have so many.
Yeah. You probably got a top 10, top 20. Well, then this leads into the last of the music part anyway. Is there, with your entire history of music, what could you give advice to like an artist out there? Like, what's your one key advice to no matter what style of music? Like,
well, I get fucking weird ass requests, and I was in Midland, Texas, which we got a really great draw out there, and it's sort of its own little weird place. And the guy's like, "I just want to be you. I want to be like you." I'm like, "Well, fuck, dude, I don't know what to tell you." I mean, and another one of our fans is like, "Elvis, here's my phone number. I need you to call me, and I need you to help me write a song for my daughter." And I tried to tell him over and over, it's like, you have it, everything I wrote from my heart. I don't know how to tell you to write a song. It's just, if you believe, and it's something that matters to you, you will write a good song. But I don't write songs about
your friend's dog. Yeah. That you don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's disingenuous. So I just say, write what you know.
Yeah.
And what you will attract a group of people who are on the same mindset. And the cool thing about what we do is most people we play for, they have like a little bit of a crazy streak. They're super solid. They're down to earth. And they sort of know how to get along. And they have a lot in common. Usually a little bit smarter of a bunch. So yeah, I would say, reach out to whatever whether it's, chewing on nails or rolling around in glass or, writing beautiful songs. Just do what you do.
Your favorite flick?
God, Exorcist is right up there. I mean, I love the original Exorcist. I love Evil Dead and Army of Darkness. And I love Apocalypse Now. So there's a few. I love Snatch.
Yeah, hell yeah.
That's a great one, and I like I really love movies that make you think a little bit more.
Yes.
And if it's something like a horror movie and it's, sort of slapstick like an Evil Dead, Army of Darkness, they play it so well and they let you know exactly what they're doing, but it's just so smart. So I like things that are that give you maybe a little bit more, where a lot of people say, "Oh, that's stupid." I'm like, well, you're not really getting it. I like stuff like that. Stuff that makes you think.
Who's your favorite actor?
maybe Robert De Niro. He's fantastic. It's hard to beat Marlon Brando in Apocalypse Now. And oh God, Daniel Day-Lewis. Man, what a
Oh
good
God, so good. Yeah,
God, he's so good. When
especially as Bill the Butcher in Gangs of New York. That's like the role I always remember him for.
That was brutal, but There Will Be Blood was absolutely mind-blowing.
Kind of a same character. You could see that character transition because they're kind of a little bit of the same. You could see Bill the Butcher in that character.
God, he was just. God, how do you even get yourself mentally in that place? I mean, that guy, what a talented human. Oh, mind blowing.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, let me ask you this: who's your favorite actor?
Honestly, I got it's a 4-pack. So I'm one of them from the 80s. I grew up with the Coreys. So it was Heyman, Feldman, because they were like 4 years older than me. So I was like idolizing them. Definitely Emilio Estevez, because I was totally like an 80s guy. So I loved the wild character that he had. I just totally loved it. And then over here, particularly from Rumblefish, I was totally like fascinated with Mickey Rourke and like how cool he was.
Mickey Rourke was sort of mind blowing, and
yes,
every guy wanted to be Mickey Rourke.
But that was it. As soon as I saw him, I was just drawn to him. I was like, wow, the girls flocked to him and stuff. I was just like, that to me.
Well, was what's so funny? I mean,
the definition of cool.
That was like pre Johnny Depp. It's funny.
Yes.
Because Mickey Rourke, and I never really put two and two together. Johnny Depp sort of took the reins from, Mickey Rourke in a sense. He had the same super cool vibe and, good looking. And yeah, no, I get that. Mickey Rourke, especially, in The Actor.
Yep.
The wrestler. Oh,
yes.
Boy. That guy, amazing.
Yep. Yeah, he was also, he was like, it's funny because a lot of the newer kids didn't understand how good looking he was in the 80s compared to the Mickey they see now. Like, oh yeah, I'm like, you have no idea. If I go Google Mickey Rourke and put 80s in, you're like, that's a handsome dude. Like that dude he had it. I didn't see any other actor doing what he did. You could almost kind of feel that Keanu Reeves has that a little bit when he came in, like this the quiet, deep guy, like you said about Johnny Depp. But Mickey was in a Rumblefish, particularly that character of the motorcycle boy. I was always just drawn to like, I'd love to be that cool someday, but of course you're not.
What about Cherry Vale? Whew.
Yeah.
Remember her? God,
yeah.
What a beauty. What was her name?
Cherry Vale. You talking about from The Outsiders?
It was the Outsiders.
Oh, so that was Diane Lane.
Diane Lane.
Wow, yeah, played Cherry Valance in The Outsiders, but she was also in Rumblefish, but a different character. Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, I love that whole era. Those were Francis Ford Coppola movies. So,
well, let me ask you this: what was your favorite '80s movie?
Lost Boys.
Lost Boys was a great one.
Yeah, when you say about 80s, though, it's kind of like when I asked you the favorite album all time. Like, I could sit there and say Lost Boys, but here comes just a pecula of films like flying at me. Like, I could honestly say like The Breakfast Club is in the top
I knew you were going to say The Breakfast Club. I was just waiting for you to say
that. Yeah, top 5 most
St. Elmo's Fire, and yeah.
No, that one to me was a little more of a drop off. To me, that The Breakfast Club is one of the top 5 most important films ever made, because growing up, how we all treated each other, and even to this day, you get them all in a room and realize, like, yeah, we're different, but we all have the same exact problems, and we're all scared. I think that was just a beautiful moment in cinema history. Last question of 10 rounds here. Who is your favorite person from history, whether they're living or passed on, that you're just drawn to? I'm like a Billy the Kid, Bruce Lee type of guy, Jimi Hendrix, but who is that for you?
That's a really good one. Gosh, that's a really good one. Man, I don't know if I can answer that. That's a really good question. I could think of a bunch, but
Yeah.
I don't
No
know
one
if
comes to mind. The world won't end. Don't worry about it.
well, I don't think it's such a good question, Paul McCartney, because there's two guys I just thought musically maybe stood out more than other people. Doesn't mean I like them the best, but Paul McCartney was so creative with everything he ever did. You know, he could pull off something like Blackbird, and he could croon like Little Richard, and but even more so, the way he produced his bass parts and the way he just did the weirdest things in recording. I probably would want to talk to him more than anybody else on the planet and just say, I don't really do drugs, but maybe you can hit me to what those fucking drugs work so I can think a little more like you. Maybe Paul McCartney.
Absolutely. No, I
And
think
I do have one, and I am gonna say one stupid fucking thing. I'm gonna
okay.
say a couple. Jimi Hendrix is another one, and you know, I never really loved the way the Beatles played American music. I just, I mean, it doesn't sound like American music to me. Straight fucking up. Everybody's going to be you bastard. But, some of it, like the hippie shake type stuff, and they're just fucking twist and shout. I thought it sounded great. But I mean, to me, it didn't really seem like, I played with all the legends of rockabilly. It didn't really seem like they got, like, oh, baby, 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 baby. It never really seemed like they truly got the American rockabilly music. But their compositions and their great songs fucking freak me out.
Elvis, but I'm so happy you came on to my show here, brother.
Well, dude, I'm glad you were kind enough to have me. You've been warning me about this for, I don't know, 13 years.
Yeah. I stay on top of things, so
yeah, dude, I love your freaking timing. How cool, man.
Fun. But feel free to, floor's yours. Feel free to plug anything you got going on.
Well, look, Three Bad Jacks, we're sort of getting, after the COVID stuff, we're actually putting the bolts back on, and the tires are getting back on the vehicle, and we're actually working really, really hard to get back out there. Luckily, we're big enough to where we can survive, but we'll always be indie. Hit us up on, our Facebook or Instagram, and we're building our website back up. A lot of really sort of unfortunate stuff has happened to us, and we're, instead of bitching about all the bad things that happen, we're moving forward to get you some great music. I mean, we were going to get a deal right before COVID, and we had to forego all that stuff and get back to the drawing board. So we're just raising money. Hit us up through the Facebook. We'll show you some merch and support us, and if you want to donate, that's even cooler. But we will see you in your town. We're going to kick ass. So thank you so much for supporting, and thanks for keeping us viable all these years. We love you. Thank you so much.
Awesome. And with that, I will thank this audience for taking the time to check out Average Superstar TV. New shows drop every Monday. Please support me by hitting that subscribe button. And with that, until next week, I will say that the party is over.